Okay, so we're back, and you've probably created some shapes and tossed them around. And honestly, you may have crashed SketchUp or something a time or two. Notice those, by the way, those collisions. Uh, those aren't a problem as long as we're still in 0 hour. We haven't moved forward in time. When we click on the green arrow, it's going to do a simulation. The first thing it's going to say is, "Wait a minute, we got one shape inside another." It'll push that out of the way because that's just kind of reality. It's got a surface tension thing going on, and then once it leaves there, now the weight falls into place for the other one and knocks it down. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things we can do here and how this program is doing things, because we're going to make a lot of interesting stuff in this, but you've got to understand how it does this collision detection for one thing. So, let's create a shape. Let's make a little ramp and try to get some balls to roll down it, and it won't work at first, and we'll see why. I'll start in this case by doing it the usual SketchUp way. I'm going to make my ramp here with a rectangle, and then I hit P for push, pull that up. Okay, great. We'll cut a slab out of it, cut a corner out of it, point to point, push down there. Okay, and then I'll make a couple of spheres out here, and hit play and watch what happens. And it's not going to work. Boom. Okay, so no collision detection on our ramp, unfortunately. And that's because by default, it is not a single object like this is, or like these. The prefabs are all, they're single objects coming straight out of the starting gate, whereas our ramp is just a bunch of flat surfaces. So, okay, well, let's make it into a single object. And we can do that, and that'll hopefully help. It's still not going to work, and you'll see why. So what I want to do here is select all the stuff on that ramp. Boom. But nothing else. I don't want anything outside it. Just the ramp. Alright. So I'm going to make it into a single object, and then when it fails, it's going to fail in a different way, and we'll examine how to fix that. So the first thing we're going to do is to make it into a single object. We're going to say make group. Now I could say make component, and it would still work. The only difference between a component and a group is if you're making a component, you can get into the list of components later and drag a bunch of them in. So if you're making something that you're going to have a lot of, you would make a component. But I only make one ramp, so it's going to be a group. Okay, so now it's one thing, and I'll get that sphere back over here, and hopefully I'll get it somewhere pretty close to the ramp. That looks pretty good, and I hit play. Nothing. And why is that? Well, let's try pulling the ball up the ramp if we can do that. No, that's not working. What you're seeing is that there's no space in the flat surface in the angled plane there. Yeah, you can collide with a place where there is nothing on the ramp, and that's because our ramp is still a big box. It doesn't recognize that it's got a wedge cut out of it yet. And we've got to tell it, hey, there's more going on here with you than just that box that you used to be. All right, we back up to the start, and let's see what happened here. So here's what's going on. The program does collision detection based on certain presumptions about the shape it's doing collision detection for. So in the case of a box like this or a sphere, it knows out of the starting gate, it knows this thing is shaped like a sphere. It's got kind of a wire cage around it, which we'll look at. We'll see that thing in a couple of minutes. And we'll see that its collision detection is very specific to the shape. That works with the prefabs fine. If not, if you're not making a prefab, then you've got to think about how to do the collision detection. Alright, there's an easy way to make the ramp work like a ramp. However, it will make one thing wrong with it we don't like, which is that the ramp won't move. Okay, the ramp won't move, that's life. To get things more sophisticated than that, we'll get to that later, but for right now what we're going to do is right click on the thing and say SketchyPhysics shape, and instead of default we're looking for a static mesh. Okay, when we say shape, that's the shape of the box, it's of the collision detection wire cage around it. Alright, so if I went with box, that would pretty much be what we already have. Using the other ones on it can get you really weird results. In this case, we're just doing a static mesh. A static mesh is exactly the shape of the thing that is being converted into a collidable object, but it's static, it doesn't move. Okay, so now it's a static mesh. Let's hit play, and now the ball goes down the ramp, but the box doesn't move. Okay, well, that's a pretty quick introduction to collisions. Like I say, we'll come back and talk about how to make things collide in different ways, and we'll put some wheels on some cars and stuff like that too. Play with that a little bit, and then we'll check out the next video.